advise people when I help them with their career development that like people don't really have a 20-year plan as much as you think. People don't have a 10-year plan. People don't even have a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And you just kind of I always did the next best thing that made sense at that given point.
Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Baldwin here. Welcome back to the Speaker Lab podcast. Today, joined by my friend, Miss Jenny Wood, who is in the thick of book launch mode. Now, here's how podcasting works, people, is that we record, and then oftentimes we were talking about things that are future tense, all right? And so most of the time we were talking about something that's happening like a month or a couple months out. She's in the thick of this. She's got a book coming out in literally a couple days. By the time you are hearing this, the book is out. You need to go get the book, Wild Courage by Jenny Wood. But Jenny, you're in the thick of it. How are you feeling right now?
Tired, exhilarated, invigorated, terrified. For each positive thing, I'm feeling the exact opposite negative thing.
All of the above. We were talking a little bit before we hit record here. Books are so much work.
Yeah.
And so one thing I'd be curious on is, how do you describe what it is that you do now? Because oftentimes for a lot of us, as they're kind of like in that personal brand space, like it's a bit of speaker, and it's a bit of author, and it's a bit of coach, or it's a bit of consultant, or it's a bit of like all of the above and none of the above. And so how do you look at yourself and your business right now?
Yeah. So if we're thinking of like the revenue streams, you named a lot of them. So I do part keynote speaking, part corporate consulting at Fortune 500 companies, or any company that wants to help their employees feel more engaged, or build better leaders or better managers. And then and this kind of fell into my lap, part one-on-one coaching, just because that's come proactively. I never thought it would be ROI positive, but I try to partner with people whose companies pay for it, and then I can charge a lot more. So that, I'd say those are the three revenue streams right now. You don't make money on a book. A book to me is a clunky business card. The book,
a lot of work. So much work.
It's the loss leader. Honestly, the book is the loss leader. The book is the calling card to go speak and consult and do things that actually make money, because a book does not.
Now, I agree with that. So I guess the argument is also then, like, do you feel like for someone who's a personal brand who wants to position themselves as an expert, do you have to have a book?
No, but with respect to speaking, I've definitely heard that it helps.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't hurt things, assuming it's a good book. But you're right that it is a ton of work where you're just like, why am I doing this? You know, there's so many other things that I could be doing. So you mentioned there, all right, coaching, speaking, some consulting work there. Did you kind of set out from the beginning that like, this is what I want the trifecta, this tripod to be, or is it just kind of evolved to that? How did you land there?
It's evolved. I've gotten good advice. We have actually, I think you know this guy, but I don't have permission to share his advice. So we know somebody who said, and I want to be really careful how I say this because I don't want to offend people, but he said, you don't want to play in the mud. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, you actually have the credentials. Google 18 years, grew from entry level to executive, founded one of the largest career programs in their history. You've got this like corporate pedigree, did research at Harvard Business School before that. He's like, I'm just putting it out there.
Let's go. Come on now.
Okay.
Turn the filter off. Let's go.
He's like, you don't have to do courses. You don't have to think about lead magnets and funnels and bow tie funnels and tripwires and, buying newsletter subscribers. He's like, you can actually be a Simon Sinek, a Dan Pink, a Gretchen Rubin, a Kim Scott. And so that feedback I really took to heart. And I was like, okay, I guess I do have something that not every speaker out there has. And it is a lot of street cred to have been at Google for 18 years, one of the best companies in the world, like senior leadership position. And so that has impacted whether I decide to put time, money, energy into investing in, let's say, a community or an online course. I also think that, I'm an economist at heart, studied economics in college and always ran operations teams at Google. And so I also look post-COVID at the downward price pressure on courses. And I feel like a course that you could have gotten $3,000 for during COVID, you're maybe getting $1,200 for now. So I'm also thinking, and that they're a lot of work. So I think a lot about like, what's good ROI on my time and what do I uniquely have? I would call it my flavor of weird that others don't have. And I think I am well positioned to make a lot of money speaking.
You referenced it a time or two there. Google is where you spent the majority of your career. 18 years there. Feels like Google hasn't been around that much longer than 18 years. So talk to us about that. What were the early days? What were you doing there? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I started when Google was 6,000 people. It was 2006. Funny story
Which is
about
still
how
a ton of people.
Still a lot of people. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It is. But now it's, I think this is a public number, I think around 180,000 or something.
Wow. Crazy.
So yeah, 99.9 something percent of Google was hired after me, which is a funny stat. But when I first started at Google, I was working with Google's advertisers like Delta or Disney or, I don't know, real estate companies.
Other deal company, letter companies.
Yeah, exactly.
Dell.
Yeah, Dell. Thank you, Dell. And I was building out keyword lists, like helping them decide what keywords to bid on for their advertising. So for Dell, computers, laptops, desktops, monitors. And then I'd say, like, I'd literally write these in Excel spreadsheets. And I say Excel because Google didn't even have the Google Sheets product yet. And so it'd be like monitors, computers, big computer, a small computer. I would literally sit down and concatenate words using a lot of Excel shortcuts to tell them what words they should bid on to try to sell more computers using Google advertising.
That's crazy. And so was that the majority of what you did there while you were there for 18 years?
No. I mean, that was very entry level. And then I ultimately ran, I had kind of strategy and operations type roles for the majority of my time there, like an internal McKinsey type of role where I would think about forecasting and revenue and things that involved bugs, where customers would flag bugs and I'd work with engineering teams to help solve them and things like that.
How long ago did you leave?
I left August 2024.
Okay, so that's fairly recent.
Fresh.
Yeah,
really
like
fresh.
less than a year. So
yeah,
I mean, it sounds like, to stay somewhere 18 years, sounds like you had a pretty solid career, enjoyed what you did. Even pre-Google, did you just say, hey, I always wanted to do the corporate thing and I just happened to land in a unicorn? Or is it like, I've actually been wanting to, do my own thing, but I kind of got stuck here, not stuck, but like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, no, I never in a million years did I want to be a writer or a speaker? Well, okay, I will say my dream job when I was a kid was to be on Broadway. So speaking is performing, speaking is being on a stage. It's wanting to make people laugh, make people cry. People tell me my keynotes do both. That's a good sign. Engaging with an audience. I had a keynote yesterday for a women in sports association in Manhattan. And like, it felt so good to walk on stage and to know that I was going to energize people, inspire them, motivate them, give them practical things to do that day, make them laugh, make them cry. So it is similar to some way. In some ways, it's like, okay, well, it's not Broadway. I was very close to Broadway physically, though. I was just right in Times Square. So maybe all my dreams are coming true, Grant.
Full circle.
I always advise people when I help them with their career development that like people don't really have a 20-year plan as much as you think. People don't have a 10-year plan. People don't even have a 5-year plan. Yeah. And you just kind of I always did the next best thing that made sense at that given point. My mom used to say, okay, you went on a date with this guy. You don't have to know if you want to marry him. Do you want to go on a date with him again? Yeah. And I'd say yes or no. And so I think a lot of my career was that let's go on another date. Let's go on another date. Google was a fluke. I just wanted to work someplace fun and hip and cool. And in 2006, Google was in the news and it was all the rage for their lava lamps and their beanbag chairs and their miso dusted cod. And I was like, yeah, there. And so I worked very hard to get a job there. And it really is a great place. So I saw no reason to leave. I would still be there if this opportunity cost on my time and energy with this book and this potential speaking didn't fall in my lap, and it literally fell in my lap.
So as you're there for 18 years, and it sounds like you had a variety of different roles. I'm assuming like you're doing some speaking, whether that's maybe not necessarily external, maybe it is, but like I'm assuming like you're giving some presentations internally. So like at what point was like the spark related to speaking starting to kind of ignite? Yeah,
well, so as I mentioned, I ran this operations team. I had COO type of roles for the majority of my career at Google. But then I saw a need where people, I'd grown a lot, right? So like I kept getting promoted. I rose to executive. And so people would come to me and they'd say, Jenny, tell us about your rise. Like, how do you thrive in this company? And I was like, okay, I was walking out of meeting with engineering on one Tuesday, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just write down some tips that like help people navigate the politics of Google, or like what it really takes to get promoted, not the BS that HR is going to tell you. Sorry, HR is amazing, but like, just like the real deal for the business, by the business, like from a senior leader. So I wrote down a page of maybe a dozen tips, and I was like, okay, I'll throw together a training and maybe a couple of people will come. I don't know, a handful, 5, 6. So I did this first training and 2,000 people came to the training, Grant.
Holy cow.
Okay, yeah. So
in person or all virtual or
virtual?
mixed?
It was during COVID. Yeah, virtual. And so I was like, I think there's something here. And what I realized in that moment was, while I liked my job in operations, I loved coaching people to be better than they think they can be. And so from there, I realized that I had stuff to say. I had a lot to say. And if I could help people in Google, I could probably help people outside of Google. So I got a great I got a great literary agent, wrote a killer book proposal. And then that's when I faced the opportunity cost, of, okay, I can't like go all in on the book and on speaking. At that point, I was speaking internally at Google up to 7 times a week, but all internal, all unpaid. But I got a lot of reps in, I got a lot of practice. I realized how much I loved it. I realized how energizing it was. I saw how I was helping people. I have an ego. It felt really good when people would say things like, this is the best training I've taken in 15 years at Google. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is my calling. And that's when I decided it's time to double down on it. And I left.
But the turning point was that initial talk with 2,000 people virtually?
I'd say that was a turning point. And then I think getting a book deal and realizing that I didn't want to phone it in on the book and I couldn't phone it in on my job. And I had some really hard moments, Grant, where I was physically, emotionally, mentally exhausted. I didn't want to let my big team down at Google. I didn't want to do this book a disservice that I'd gotten a big advance for with Penguin Random House. And I was driving my son home from choir one day. We live in Boulder at the base of these, foothills mountains. And so I was driving home windy roads and I was like, did my eyes just flutter closed? Because I was up 2 to 5 a.m. many nights, just like with so much lowercase a anxiety, trying to figure out how I could people please everybody and like do a good job at Google and start thinking about this stuff externally and start, working on the book. And it was a really scary moment for me. That to me was the turning point of like, you've got to choose, Jenny, and you can do it all, but you can't do it all at the same time. And I was trying to do it all at the same time. So I just decided I've been here 18 years. Yes, I have incremental growth every day, but if I leave, I'll get some step function growth in terms of my learnings, my failures, putting myself out there, betting on myself, rolling the dice, seeing what happens. And I don't have an answer right now. I cannot say like, this was the best decision I've ever made. Financially, emotionally, mentally, enjoyment wise, it's still early days and it's a little TBD, but it's an exciting journey. I'll tell you that. It's also pretty daunting, but it's fun. It's going well.
When you gave that first kind of major presentation, 2,000 people internally, what you mentioned that was in COVID, and kind of what places and time where that was?
Years, like actual date?
No. Just like roughly, we're talking 2020 or 2020?
2021, I think.
Okay. So a year or so, give or take, into COVID. I was just trying to think through like, okay, so that happens in 2021. You got 3 more years at Google. And so during that time at Google, it sounds like you are continually giving more and more presentations and speaking, honing the craft, also kind of figuring out like, and figuring out like, hey, here's this thing that like I'm kind of good at and I enjoy doing and I'm getting good feedback and it's kind of scratching this itch. So each time you're giving a talk internally is more and more just like the fire's just kind of getting brighter and hotter and just started going like, I think I'm onto something here.
Totally. Yeah. Cause like I'd feel so energized after each talk and I'd feel like I'd do a better and better job each time. And then also I would be so nervous when because sometimes then we started doing the talks across the company. Again, all internal, all unpaid. But then I was having audiences of like 4,000 people, 3,000 people, 4,000 people. And I would know those numbers before I got there. And I'd initially be really nervous thinking, how am I going to deliver? And like my palms would be sweating and I'd, have a rough night's sleep before. Again, a lot of lowercase a anxiety. And then I got to the point where like, it was just old hat. Like I'd barely remember to, brush my hair and I'd like show up just so confident that I was going to rock it. Now I'm right back to square one because this is all different content. This is about the book. That's a different, it's a different type of thing. So, but I have to keep in mind that once I was scared and I became no longer, and now I'm scared again and I shall be no longer one day.
Now you could make the argument though, like, okay, you know, did that first kind of major gig internally in 2021, and then continue to do a lot of gigs internally. And so part of what you desired in terms of like making an impact, here's the topic that I speak about, being able to kind of coach and impact other people. Like the argument could be made, you had a really good sandbox to continue doing that, and so you could have, in one way, like done that the rest of your career, and just like Google's big enough to. You could go and make the rounds throughout and be kind of the internal, you know, doing that song and dance. And like also kind of have the arguably the safety, security of, you know, really well-paying, secure job.
I part of me thinks I should have done that. I am not kidding, Grant. This is so hard to be an entrepreneur, and it's going well, and it's going to continue to go well. But man, like I knew it would be eat what you kill. I knew it would be a lot of pitching and, you know, conversations with speakers bureaus and referrals and getting the book out there to people and information chats, like coffee chats with prospects. But it is way harder than I expected. And there are definitely times, I think the last few weeks especially, where I've been like pretty tired and a little overwhelmed with the book launch, where I'm like, why did I do this? Like, why didn't I just stay at Google, collect my insane paycheck, and be like the internal person, right? Yeah. There was a significant portion of the company that followed my stuff and came to my talks. And I was like, I mean, I was a little like famous within Google, and now I'm just out here on my own, feel like I'm totally starting from scratch. It's hard. But you also have a decent amount of, you know, headaches that come with being at a big company. And I was like, well, there's something fun about just giving this a shot and razzle dazzling the book and talking for 2 or 3 years. And I can always go back and do that again if I want to. But there was some level of high net freedom that was appealing to me of just being on my own.
It sounds like from what you've described there that the book was also kind of a linchpin and turning pin and going like, okay, am I going to really like put my flag in the ground here, stake in the ground of like for this topic, for this area of expertise. So how did the book kind of come about? And it sounds like it was kind of in conjunction with, I'm doing a lot of speaking internally, but were you starting to do speaking externally? Like how did that all play in together?
Yeah. So I was speaking internally, but I had an eye toward wanting to do it externally and just realizing that Google's, 180,000 people, but like there are 8 billion people in the world. So that's where I get back to that turning point of how can I have the most impact and help the most people? And the book seemed like the right way to do that. And like, it's a lot of work to write a book, a lot of work. So I physically could not do it. I didn't want to do it with 10% of my time because I wanted the book to be really freaking great. And I knew that like marketing a book and selling a book falls on the author, not the publisher, not your agent, not your publicist. And so I just literally could not do them both once I, got excited about doing the book.
And so once you decided to do the book though, that would have been what, 22, 23?
So book started, I started thinking about the book it takes a couple years to write a book. So I'm trying to remember 2022 maybe is when I started thinking about the book.
But point being is like you started thinking about it, then it, like you mentioned, it's a crap load of work to do a book. You for anyone who's listening who's like, should I do a book? Like I know you and I are kind of poo-pooing it. It's just a lot of work,
But it does also,
the finished product is valuable, but
it's also really, really fun. Like I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing what a privilege it is, how damn excited I am about these 9 traits I talk about in Wild Courage. It is just an absolute joy, and I feel like I'm already winning. It is so much fun. You're catching me at a point where there's a lot going on. So
but
I guess I'm keeping it real, but it
real,
is really, really special to write a book. And sometimes I read it, Harry Styles loves to listen to his music, so I don't feel bad saying this. Sometimes I read it because I'm looking for a certain excerpt or something for a press article, and I'm like, damn, this is good. And I feel a lot of joy.
That's good. You should. All right. So ultimately you're in a spot where, you've been considering the book, you're working on the book, and then like at some point you make the leap to go all in on this thing. And I think the part that you were in is intriguing for a lot of people who are going, I have a day job. I'm doing this thing day in and day out. It is safe, secure, maybe not.
Sure.
Maybe that's just a myth. But ultimately, like, there's also this thing that's just tugging at me on nights and weekends.
This
like,
itch.
I want to do this thing, and I think I can do this thing, and I'm also like, maybe I'm insane to think about it. I think one of the things that's really interesting about this conversation is the time at which we're catching you. Is sometimes you talk to someone who's like, yeah, I worked at Google for 18 years and now I've been on my own for 20 years and I'm successful and look at it.
Sure.
It all worked out. And like, you're in it right now.
We
I'm
don't
going like,
know.
I'm on like chapter 3 and I don't know what the rest of the book is going to play out. So
Yeah.
like, what would you say to that person who's in a similar spot of going like, I have this day job, but I'm really intrigued to chase this dream onto the side?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I'm just like starting out. It's true. So I was just having a mentorship call with Dan Pink, who's just wonderful, and he's like, Jenny, you're not even in the first inning. You haven't even put on your cleats yet, or if you have, they're still so new that you're getting blisters. And I was like, wait, I thought I was in the 4th inning because like the book comes out just like around the corner. He's like, no, it hasn't even started. So you're characterizing it perfectly, Grant. I really am in this very uncertain, very unstable, very nerve-wracking and exhilarating and exciting and thrilling state. But, I one of the things that helped me pull the trigger, because I spent a year thinking about whether I should stay or go. And as an entrepreneur, like we hear a lot about entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
People who go
Yeah.
and do their own thing. But like I was an entrepreneur. I created this incredibly successful program at Google. And first of all, that is a great strategy. Like if you are thinking about doing something long-term, like test it internally, be an entrepreneur, right? And go create something amazing for your company and see if you enjoy doing it, see if it resonates. And then make sure you follow all the code of conduct and all the rules, right? And like non-compete agreements and everything that, everyone should be mindful of, but like go do something internally for your company and see if you like it. So I ultimately was able to leave when I started thinking differently about my relationship to money and the value I placed on money and what that was relative to the value of, spending time with my kids, the value of building my own schedule, the value of being creative, the value of passion. And those are things, and I will be honest, it was and still is really, really hard for me to let go of my value of money. I'm the breadwinner for my family. I always grew up, I'm a third generation Holocaust survivor. So like I was always raised with this mindset of scarcity and not abundance. The Nazis are coming. Like there's never enough money. Like World War III is going to happen and like it could all go away. So even though I've always been really comfortable financially and worked extremely hard and never been a spender, never bought shoes or bags or fancy cars, I always had this perspective of, but what if I run out of money? And so even though my financial advisor always said, like, you are fine, go take this leap, I couldn't believe it. I still don't believe it.
So you make the leap. And then like at some point you are, you wake up on a Monday morning and you're just like, what did I do here? Like, did you have some regret to making the leap?
I think I thought that like 3 times today. Again, I'm really excited to be here, but I want to keep it very real. Yeah. There are times where I wonder if it was the right thing, but I think because I think I'm on the precipice of something big. I talk to speaking agents, I talk to friends in the business, I talk to my literary agent, my publisher, and they're like, Jenny, like buckle up. Someone said to me, don't worry about running out of money. You're going to be in like private jet territory. I'm just saying what they said to me. And I loved it because I was like, thank you for believing in me. But, I got really nice feedback from a keynote. Someone said, I think you're the next Mel Robbins. Someone said, you're a phenom. Someone said it was an 11 out of 10. I thought the talk was a 5 out of 10. Quite frankly, this was yesterday. But I don't know. I also just have to believe that these are smart people. And who am I to not believe that they know what they're talking about? So that gives me confidence and that gives me a bounce in my step. But it's like, we will see. I'm working really hard. The 4th trait of the book of Wild Courage is called obsessed. I'm obsessed with honing my craft and making the keynote as good as possible. I have an incredible keynote speaking consultant, writer / coach guide, Mike Pacquione, who I think you also know.
He's been on the show numerous times.
Oh, yeah.
Close friend. Yep.
Yeah. And so I am doing everything I can to make my speeches as good as possible, incorporating feedback, having the audience raise their hand to tell me, okay, which of these 4 tools do you want to try out this week? That tells me right there, if only 10% raise their hand for tool number 4, cut tool number 4 in your keynote next week, Jenny. I do a lot of just like real time taking in of feedback and data collection. Mike, my keynote coach, who said, he's like, I've never seen anybody with a spreadsheet on actually tracking what parts of their keynote resonate the most. He's like, you send out surveys and you ask people their favorite tips. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I? Because this is like the left brain data analyst in me that did all that stuff at Google.
And so when you you go out on your own and you start booking gigs. Are you like, what are you doing to book gigs? Because again, when you, it's one thing when you're just internal and you know, people may be asking you to do something. It's another thing when you're like, okay, now I'm outside of that umbrella and I'm dependent on finding my own, you know, I got to leave the cave and kill something and drag it home. And so what are you doing early on to find gigs?
Okay, so well, first start with who you know. Ask your friend. Like, I don't know if you follow Noah Kagan's work, but
he's a good friend.
Yeah. So Noah's great. And it's this whole thing like the coffee challenge. Go ask for $1, ask for your first dollar and start with 5 people you know. Don't go trying to build a fancy website and get to, 50,000 newsletter subscribers. Just go ask 3 friends that you worked with in the past who've left Google and gone on to Target or Airbnb or Netflix and say, hey, you knew my work from Google. Would you consider mentioning my name to be a keynote speaker for your next sales kickoff, event? So I'd say start with people you know. I've done a ton of that. I feel like now I'm just like dropping all the people who we have in common. Mo Bunnell's concept, give to grow. I have gifted my book to so many people. I use it as a calling card, and I do that to try to get in the door. I have started working with speakers bureaus. And that's been an interesting experience. I think some are really good. Others, like, it's an odd industry. And I think finding the right, like the conversation I had with a bureau this morning, I wanted to match, like, are you the kind of bureau that does like $7,000 to $15,000 gigs? Or are you the kind of bureau that does like $30,000 to $50,000 gigs? And even though I'm very flexible on pricing right now, because I want to get out there, I want to get the reps in, I want to price to get the gigs as opposed to pricing to only be on a plane 4 times a year, like Mel Robbins, right? Or, like charging insane amounts of 6 figures to come speak. I do want to put myself in the upper echelon of speakers. And I think with the credentials and the book, I'm well positioned to do that. But so that was like a conversation I was having this morning. What types of speakers do you typically book? Where are you in the market? And they were feeling me out as well. Where are you? And what are you charging? And I got interesting advice that I semi-took, but didn't totally take. Someone said to me, who I really respect in the industry, Jenny, don't underprice yourself. At $20,000, you're just a run-of-the-mill speaker like everybody else. At $60,000, you're famous. They just haven't heard of you yet. And it was a good push to not, especially as a female, right? I think women can oftentimes undervalue themselves. And it was a good push to not charge, $2,000, but I do not charge 60. And I'm glad I don't, because sometimes even at, 20 or 25 or 30, I still don't get the gig because some companies or organizations just don't have that kind of budget.
Yeah. How have you thought about pricing? Because especially when you're, the longer you do it, the more you're kind of like, okay, I kind of figure out kind of the rules of the game and, the rules of engagement, so to speak, and kind of know, where I fall and when it makes sense to raise prices or not raise prices. But how are you kind of navigating that now, especially in the early days of just, to some degree, it's like, it's a bit wild, wild west. And I'm just trying to figure out what to charge.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just be transparent about my pricing now. And I will say a mistake I made early on was like trying to analyze each client that came in. Like, let's say somebody came in my website because they saw something I wrote on LinkedIn. By the way, that's another way I'm trying to get out there is I post 7 days a week on LinkedIn. And the more I post speaking clips, the more inquiries I get. So, that's, I think, a great, easy tactic there. Well, not so easy. It's not so easy to create content every day for LinkedIn. But like, since I do create content every day for LinkedIn, it's not so hard to switch from written content or a PDF, a static PDF, to like a 30-second speaking clip, which, by the way, required me hiring for $1,000, $1,500 a couple times, a video crew to come in and independently film me with the client's okay, so that I have all that collateral, that footage to use. And now I totally lost track of the question.
Speaking fees. How are you thinking about speaking fees?
Okay, so I was saying a mistake I made early on was like looking at each client, Googling their revenue, Googling how many people at the company, how big the association is, and like trying to price per what I think they would pay. Once I started talking to bureaus and they explained fee integrity to me, which is basically having the same fee across the board so that you can't get Jenny for, $10K from one bureau and it's $25K from another bureau. I just picked a price. So right now I'm priced at $25,000 with the book about to come out. It's includes $5,000 of books gifted to the company. And then I think that'll shift. And one thing that surprised me is like, I am trying so hard, working so hard and putting so much time, energy, investment into trying to get on the New York Times. And then I had this conversation that blew my mind wide open today, which was, Jenny, even if I said, like, if I hit the Times, how much would you increase my speaking fee? Like thinking, I'll go to 40 overnight. And they're like, we'd keep you at 25 because like, you got to get the data first. We've got to see the demand. You're still new. You're untested for the most part in the wide world of speaking, even though I probably get one inquiry a week. And the last several weeks I've been doing at least one, almost full fee gig a week, and have, that coming up as well. So the data's starting to come in, but I was really surprised that they were like, no, we wouldn't raise you at all if you hit the New York Times. And I was like, wait, what? I've just spent the last 2 years of my life doing everything I can to market this book and try to hit the New York Times.
You mentioned that you've been talking more with bureaus recently,
Yeah.
and we've had a lot of people from bureaus, people represented by bureaus on the show. Kind of a love-hate relationship with bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
How are you thinking about bureaus right now at where you sit?
Yeah, well, someone said to me recently, when you want a bureau, they don't want you, and when you don't want a bureau, when you don't need them anymore, they want you. So, I mean, I've actually had a really good experience. Can I say one that I think is awesome
please.
in particular? I think leading authorities has been fantastic. The ones I've heard that are, I'm just going to keep being really transparent. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard that. Well, now anybody who's listening to this from not those, I'm just going to stop.
I mean,
there.
here's the reality. Like in the bureau space, is you have it's like a 90-10 type deal, or 95-5 of you got a handful of bureaus that do the majority of the business, and then you have a whole lot of small mom and pop that kind of fill in the gaps there, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have some that are like, these are amazing, and they've been at it for a long time, and they have a good reputation, and they're good to speakers, and they're good to clients. And you also have some that have burned bridges in the industry and have a bad reputation, and that's the case with anything.
Sure, totally.
And like
you
describe bureaus exactly right. That that when you are interested in with them, that they don't care about you. And I think a lot of times, like especially when we're talking with newer speakers, they're going like, "How do I get in with a bureau? How do I get in with a bureau? How do I get a bureau?" Like, a bureau doesn't care about you. They don't. And like, if you're building your business purely to get in with a bureau, like that just doesn't work. Versus saying like, no, I'm going to go build my business, and I'm going to go get gigs, and eventually, if a bureau is interested in me, cool, we can have that conversation. But I don't want to be dependent on them to chase business for me.
Yeah. And for me right now, it's a little bit of both. Like, I've got some bureaus I work with. Had another great conversation with a bureau today, that very small shop that seemed lovely. And they were the ones talking to me more about speaker managers. And I was like, yeah, I've haven't really thought about it yet, but net, it seems like pretty much industry standard, correct me if I'm wrong, is 20 to 25% for the bureau, and then 10% for the speaker manager. So you could be giving up to 30. It adds up for sure. But, they'll pitch you on, well, if you don't have a team on the back end, you don't want to be dealing with 3 different meeting planners in a given week and negotiating contracts and what the force majeure clause should say in the contract and all that stuff. So, I mean, I have a chief of staff. I've got 6 interns working with me right now. I've got a good team, but if enough volume comes in, I could see the benefit of a speaker manager, and also just someone who is advocating for me to all the bureaus and keeping me top of mind. That's, I think, the function I'm learning is what a speaker manager would play, as opposed to just being with the bureaus. Because I will say, when I first started getting introduced to all these different bureaus, I got really overwhelmed, Grant. And they all wanted all my assets and my bio and my videos and the clips, and I literally could not even follow up on all their requests. They weren't unreasonable requests. I just had talked to 6 bureaus within a span of 2 weeks, and I dropped the ball on stuff, and I got really overwhelmed. So that would almost be the argument for just go exclusive with somebody and just build a great relationship with them. But someone also said, don't go exclusive with anybody. If they can send you 25 gigs a year, sure, consider it. But until then, just there's no benefit. So,
But this is the case with anything. Is you're going to talk to one person who says, I did it this way and it worked. And you can talk to someone else who's like, I did it a totally opposite way and it worked.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's Yep. They both work, and there's a whole bunch of middle ground in there that also could work. And so that's part of what makes it difficult and tricky at times, is there's not necessarily this is the only way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing that.
I will say the one thing that I think is the biggest blocker is until they've seen you live. First of all, I did not have a lot of great video because all the Google stuff I'd done was internal, and plus it was different content anyway, so it wasn't relevant to what I'm speaking about now. But the biggest blocker when bureaus would hesitate to work with me when I was first having conversations was, Jenny, you don't have any video. We can't sell you if you don't have clips or a full keynote we could share with them. And so that's why I had to work really hard in the last few months to hire external videographers and to get those things. And now I do feel like I've got some good stuff, and it makes a huge difference. But even if you have the video, it wasn't really until a couple weeks ago that I did this showcase for this bureau that they really started to pitch me because they could then confidently say, I've seen her. She's amazing. She's going to be perfect for these types of audiences. She's not right for these audiences. And so a lot has rolled in since they've seen me live now. And I think that makes a big difference.
So to that end, one of the things that it can be easy for speakers to fall into a trap of is going like, I have a cool story. I have a cool resume. I have some pedigree to my name.
Yeah.
And I'm Jenny Wood. You should be lucky to have me come speak to you. But
Sure.
you have taken, you've mentioned this a couple times, but also we were talking a little bit beforehand, like you've taken the craft of speaking very, very seriously. So maybe speak a little bit to that of like how you've approached it, because even, in your time at Google, you gave a lot of presentations in a lot of different contexts and a lot of different people. But how are you continually going like, I do a good job, but like there's still room for improvement. How do you think about that?
Oh man. Okay. This is my favorite question ever. So it's ironic because Mike Pacquiao, who's my keynote coach, he read the book, right? You've got the 9 traits of wild courage: weird, selfish, shameless, obsessed, nosy, manipulative, brutal, reckless, and bossy. And I alluded to this already, but when Mike read it, he's like, I read the book, loved it. He's like, by the way, I skipped the obsessed chapter. It just sounded tiring. and I was like, oh, Mike, that one's so good. So obsessed is the courage to set your own standard. It's about pushing, performing, persisting, because like none of the other traits in wild courage will serve you well if you don't learn to deliver. So you've got to, not for some company, by the way, but to achieve your own ambitions. And so then like 24 hours later, when Mike had told me that he skipped the obsessed chapter because it sounded tiring, and no knock on Mike, I get it. I would have skipped it also. But he's like, oh, Jenny, I just texted you. I want you to watch minute 7 of Steve's Jobs commencement speech. And then, by the way, I want you to watch this craft and commerce speech where, this speaker does something really interesting with her breath work. And I've been working, then he emailed me this section of the talk. He's like, hey, I think he's like, we've got 3 different ways we could work this section. We could do tool, story, or we could do story, tool. And I was like, okay, Mike, do you realize that everything you're doing right now is obsessed? Like this is the essence of obsessed. You are obsessed about making me look good. And he's phenomenal. Obsessed about getting this tone just right. Obsessed about the laughter. Obsessed about the pause. Obsessed about getting it just so. And you won't stop until it's there, Mike. And I love that about you. And I love that you're pushing me this way. But to me, I am obsessed about the craft of my speech. I even so much like the confidence monitors in the room yesterday. It was a weird display that I'd never really used before, where I kept thinking that I was talking about the slide that was going to come next because of the way it was displayed. And then I would realize that behind me was the previous slide. Like such a rookie move. But it's like, okay, so an obsessed move is to call Google, where I have a keynote next week, and say, hey, can you take a picture of the confidence monitors? And so I can see, is it 1? Is it 2? Like how much wiggle room do we have to like display it differently? Like those kinds of things that you don't realize make a big difference, but make a big difference. Or I have this really funny part of the talk where I put up this spreadsheet that I used when I was going on first dates in my 20s. And like, I did not realize it would get like roarous laughter. And I realized I was competing with the laughter. And so just watching back my footage every single time, twice, every single time, and just taking notes and thinking, what do I want to tweak? Not just like, oh, it was good, exhale, walk off stage and go grab a coffee. Like taking mental notes, asking for feedback, asking the meeting organizers, I literally said, did I talk too quickly? And she's like, well, everyone has adrenaline. I was like, oh my gosh, I spoke too quickly. Like I can tell I'm doing it right now. I am talking too quickly right now. It's that constant desire to improve.
And so walk us through even like, what is that like almost post-game performance or assessment like? Meaning like, because you mentioned like you're watching every talk that you do twice.
Yeah,
taking
every
notes,
talk I do twice.
Like walk us, you sit down, you cue it up. What are you looking for? What are you writing down? What goes in the spreadsheet?
Yeah, so it's everything from slides. Like yesterday, I realized, okay, so the 3 sections I did yesterday were 3 traits. It was brutal, it was bossy, then brutal, then obsessed. And then I realized that I never really concluded those. I just kind of went into tools and then went into my call to action and then went into my final story and like final charge to the audience. And I was like, wait, I have to like come back and remind them, these are the 3 things that we did: bossy, brutal, and obsessed. And like a simple thing like that, where I like forgot to kind of bring it home. and I did this on the plane coming home. And then sometimes I'll watch one live and then I'll listen to one as I'm hiking because I try to hike every day, just to think of, because then I can focus like really deeply on the breath work or on pausing or the speed or where I just like don't know the section well enough. And clearly am overly relying on the confidence monitors and the notes. That was another interesting thing, is because it was kind of a little bit of a janky setup yesterday. I was like, oh, I put this new section in here just thinking like I'll be fine with the confidence monitors, because the keynote I did the previous week was like gorgeous room, an amazing 40-person AV team, and like the confidence monitors have my notes super big, and I was like, whatever, I don't have time to like memorize this part of it, and I was like, I'll just glance down at my notes, but it was so small I couldn't even read it. So like even just being prepared for anything, and like don't rely on the tech. Rely on the tech.
I want to wrap up with this. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but you mentioned like this is all like happening right now, you know, because again, it's not like we were watching this and like, and it all worked out, you know, like you're in it, you're doing it. And also like, how much are you feeling just imposter syndrome of going like, man, I know I bring something to the table. I know I'm not an idiot. I know there's something here. I know I've worked really, really hard to get to this point, but how often are you standing up there on stage or sitting by yourself on a plane and just going like, who am I to be doing this? Like, how are you dealing with that at all?
Oh, all the time. I mean, this week was the first one that I wasn't up till, no joke, 3:00 in the morning, like trying to cram in my brain. Like I am building this parachute while I jump off the cliff, Grant. And it's not like, I'm also launching a book. And raising a family. So it's not like I'm only a speaker and I have all the time in the world. I actually have had very little time to focus purely on the speaking. So it's happening really last minute. I am not proud of that, but the ideal version of Jenny would be, like have this locked and loaded the month before the keynote rolls around. But the reality is I am literally putting new sections in my speaker notes and transferring it from Google Slides where I work to PowerPoint that they need at 9:59 a.m. when they say they need the slides by 10, and I go on it too.
Life of a speaker.
Yeah. The imposter syndrome is so real. Like here are my gremlins that come up. Everyone has heard this before. This content is not new, even though I do feel like the 9 traits are a really fun, sizzly packaging of it. You're a woman, so you're automatically not going to have as much credibility. You're not going to be able to charge as much. You don't get, I tend to not get nervous on stage. Like I tend to not kind of have hands shaking on stage, but I get really nervous the day before thinking, I don't know this content well enough. The balance, like I don't have the balance right. I don't have enough research in my talk. I don't have the balance right of stories versus tools. And a lot of these things, because I worry about these things, they are fine, but I just, again, live in that scarcity mindset of like, it's never good enough. So basically I'm just a crackpot.
But I think the truth is like, we all feel that. Like every time I'm talking with other speakers or entrepreneurs or whoever, it's just like, the reality is like when you pull back the veil and you pull back the curtain, we're all doing our best. We're all making it up as we go. And some days like, okay, this came together. And other days like, well, we had a good run and and we'll try again on something else, Oh, and that's normal.
Yeah. The other thing is like audience fit. I get really nervous. I think I get imposter syndrome where I just worry like, what if this doesn't resonate with this particular audience? I think that makes me really nervous. And how do I find the right audiences? But I also need to take pride in the fact that I am getting good feedback and it is good. And I know I'm a good speaker, and I wouldn't have ever left Google to do this if I didn't get all this feedback that was like, you are one of the best speakers I've ever heard. So I have to believe that data, even though I feel so insecure about it some days.
All right, we got to wrap up. The book is out now. Wild Courage. Go pick it up. Give us the nutshell. What's the book about? Where can we find it?
Yeah. So Wild Courage is basically the process of overcoming 3 fears: fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of judgment of others. And you do it by leaning into these 9 eyebrow raising traits, because things like manipulative, selfish, shameless, reckless create the bars of an invisible cage that keep you small. So leveraging the shameless, invoking my shameless trait here, go pick it up. Hard copy helps the most. If you're indifferent to format, pick up a hard copy. I'd be so grateful. That helps authors a lot. But super pumped to share it with people.
Jenny, thanks for the time. If people want to find out, in addition to the book, just follow you, your speaking journey, where can we find you online?
Yeah, definitely. It's jennywood.com, ITSJENNYWOOD.com. And it's jennywood.com/say no will get you a free guide to say no to meetings, favors, and projects. Because as speakers, as entrepreneurs, you got to prioritize your time and like say yes to the big and no to the small. And that freebie helps you do it.
Jenny, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for your vulnerability, for your authenticity, and super excited for you and the new book.
Oh, thanks so much. What a fun conversation.